This Wednesday evening, and welcome to the Arizona Capital Times Meet the Candidates. My name is Luige del Puerto. I'm the associate publisher and editor of the Arizona Capital Times. I will be moderating tonight's meet and greet. We would have loved to have met with everybody in person. However, we want to keep the candidates, you, the voters, and our staffers safe from COVID-19. Tonight is the third of a series of Meet the Candidates events that we're doing throughout this week. We will do one again tomorrow and on Friday, starting at 6 p.m. At this point, I want to thank the Arizona Citizens Clean Elections Commission for sponsoring this series. The Citizens Clean Elections Commission administers the Citizens Clean Elections Act, which voters passed in 1998. The act seeks to restore citizen participation and confidence in the political system, improve the integrity of the Arizona state government, and promote freedom of speech under the U.S. and Arizona constitutions. To tell us more, please welcome Gina Roberts, the Voter Education Director of the Citizens Clean Elections Commission. Gina?
Hi, Luigi. Thank you, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning in tonight to learn more about the candidates that are running in your district and that are asking for your vote. The reason why Clean Elections sponsored this series is because it's our mission to help voters participate in the political process. Tonight, it's an opportunity for you to become informed about the candidates and learn a little bit more about what they stand for. It's a very timely series because early voting actually started on July 8th. So many of you may have your ballot in your hand already. I still do, I certainly do. And we hope that the tools offered by Clean Elections, such as our voter education guide, which should hopefully be in your hands as well too. They were sent to every household with a registered voter. In addition to our debates that we sponsored for the primary election, and of course this series, we hope all of those tools help you to vote informed and to cast an informed vote. After tonight, if you'd like more information on the candidates, such as their contact information, their websites, their social media links, their biographies, and of course more information about the primary election itself, which is on August 4th, you can visit our website, which is azcleanelections.gov. Again, thank you for tuning in tonight, and I hope you enjoy meeting your candidates.
Thank you, Gina. A few housekeeping notes. First, please note that this is not a debate. Candidates are here to tell you about their campaigns and perhaps try and persuade you to vote for them. But really, it's an opportunity for you to send in your questions and have them answer those questions. You can do that by submitting your questions via the link which you will find in the YouTube description for this event at the bottom of your screen. And we will try to get to as many of them as we can tonight. Another housekeeping note, we will be bringing in the candidates by batch. And we will, and when I mean by batch, it's candidates by district. And so we will take a very short break at the end of each batch of candidates so that we can bring in the next batch of candidates. And at this point, we're going to take a short break. We'll bring in our first candidate from Legislative District 13. And so stay tuned. We will be right back. Welcome back to Meet the Candidates. And with us tonight is Representative Tim Dunn from Legislative District 13. Representative Dunn, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, why you're seeking re-election, and how has the pandemic changed the way you're campaigning?
Hey, Luigi, thanks for having me, and glad to be here. Glad you guys are watching. My name is Representative Tim Dunn. I'm a third-generation farmer. I live in Yuma, Arizona, represent LD 13. I've got a wife of 20 years. My oldest son is married to Kirk, married to Sierra. We've got our first grandchild, 32 days old, so we've been enjoying her. And my youngest son is in the Air Force. And so I'm a third-generation farmer, and we also have some Sport Clips haircuts. So we're very business-oriented. Live here in Yuma, but my district goes all the way up to Wickenburg, Litchfield Park, west side of the district. We have 3 Air Force bases in our district. And so, I come from a rural background, but we've always known, worked around generationally planning around Marine Corps Air Station. So being able to work with Luke Air Force Base and the Yuma Proving Ground, I understand how those things work, and have been able to hit the ground running at the legislature. So, working with that kind of environment, knowing how we have growth is kind of why I wanted to get reelected. I have some unfinished business that we want to get taken care of, and representing our constituents, from the rural areas of Wickenburg down to Buckeye and Yuma. So I feel real comfortable meeting with our constituents. And so, that's kind of why I want to go back and get reelected. So, but as we look at the COVID, the whole pandemic situation, when we got shut down, we had 4 stores that got to be closed, and we had those employees, we were worried about them and their livelihoods. The farming operation, we had some impacts on some of their exports, but we've been able to basically been working every day out on the farm and just got through grain harvest. So that's been working, but it's been a stress with some of our employees coming over from Mexico. So we had to deal with things on a day-to-day changing, and it's been eye opening. So, but we got our stores back open.
Mr. Dunn, Representative Dunn, you mentioned that you're fully operational. Your business is fully operational.
Yeah, we got when the governor allowed the salons to open up, those 4 Sport Clips, the 2 in Maricopa County and 2 in Yuma, we were able to get them up and going. We got all of our teams back. They're all wearing full safety gear. The masks. That was part of our process. We were involved with the governor's office when we were giving them ideas of how we were going to want it to open. I had conversations with them as how we would use in our salons and nationwide with Sport Clips. And so we had to, a lot of the things that they incorporated is what we were going to do nationally as a franchise anyway. So they're up and running. In the farming operation is we're harvesting grain and shipping seed right now.
Um, and let's talk about COVID-19. As you know, the governor has imposed certain requirements on businesses. Last 3 months or so, 3-4 months or so. Among other things, very recently he has prohibited large gatherings. Special events, big special events. He has paused the operations of bars, gyms, movie theaters, water parks, tubing in the rivers, and he has required restaurants to open only at 50% capacity. I wonder what your thoughts are on the measures the governor has taken so far.
Well, I think if you go clear back to the beginning, the governor's taken a very major response. Remember, we were one of the first states, one of the last states to close down, and so as far as doing restrictions, so we thought we would be able to be the last to close and the first to open. And so it's hard to Monday morning quarterback when you're not looking at all these things. And so I know the governor is very business oriented, and he hates like anything to have business closed. But when you're looking at the hospital rates with they're being full like they are, we're continue to advocate with them not to close anything else down. We want to try to work on getting the gyms open back up with safety measures in place. Most of the restaurant association said that most of them were already operating at around 50%. And so some of the folks that were not kind of following the the bad actors that weren't following more of the safe guidelines, it's what they were really targeting on the 50%. So I know that they did work with Representative Winiger and the Restaurant Association and different stakeholders to make sure that they weren't just really hurting them, but they were trying to improve the industry. And I've talked to several restaurants in Yuma. Some of them, as long as you don't make them close, some of them are on track with their takeout businesses. They're still doing well. So we just need to get people out, make sure people are comfortable with what we're doing as we're going forward. Because if you're fearful, then you're going to stay home. We need to people know that they can come out into society and know that they can get in and get what they want. They can go to a restaurant, they can sit in a waiting room with mask on, and then take their mask off when they have customers working in mass. So, do we want to live like this forever? No, but we need to make sure that we can get our economy going by people know that they are not being fearful, but they're just being mindful of their surroundings.
So, as you know, even in the legislature, you have some of your colleagues, for example, on the Democratic aisle, calling for a more strident measure, a requirement, for example, to wear a mask, statewide. Right now, if you're going to a restaurant, you have to wear a mask under the governor's latest executive order. Some are asking for to impose that requirement statewide, regardless of where you are. If you are in public, wear a mask. Some have called for maybe shutting down more businesses. In the last couple of nights that we've had meet the candidates, some of the candidates have proposed that maybe we need to shut down the restaurants completely in the meantime. I wonder what your thoughts are.
I think trying to keep businesses open. There's areas of the state that are more rural that have smaller facilities that should be able to open up, and so we need to let those. I think that's why the governor deferred to some of the mayors so that they can try to consider have statewide mandates instead of him coming and picking and choosing the smaller rural towns of what they need to be doing. And so the town of Welton in our district is a lot different than the town of Yuma. So I think we need to make sure we have a measured response. We don't need to keep cutting down. Some of my Democrat colleagues, that's what they'd like to do. They'd like to keep us shut down and continue to have, the government write checks. And we need to work together to get things open in a safe, mindful manner so that we can make sure people feel comfortable coming out. We don't want to have a fearful society where we've lost our freedoms, and we need to make sure there's just as many things that go wrong whenever you're locked up in your room. You start having depression issues, you start having other physical issues. And so we need to make sure that we can safely get people out in the public, and that right now we're letting some of the mayors take care of that.
So, there's one recurring thought that I've heard from people, which is that maybe the legislature should be in session right now to act as some sort of a check on the governor's executive powers. You've had members of your own caucus, wanting to have a special session, for example, or at least to be in some sort of in some sessions that they have the ability to maybe pass legislation or as I mentioned, kind of act as a check on the governor. What are your thoughts on that, Representative Dunn? Would you have preferred that the legislature is in session right now?
Well, I think there are some things that the legislature needs to get done. And I think that we need to change the statute that we're referring to as far as the executive powers. But I don't think in the middle of a pandemic, you want to go down to the legislature and have a battle and all talk about and just argue about which powers you're going to do, how you're going to limit those, because that's not true working on the pandemic. I think our citizens and those in Arizona want us to work on what we need to get fixed in the pandemic, not arguing about who's in charge and who needs to have the voice. So we think next session we need to come back and look at that statute and figure out how to do that. I think we need to continue to work with the governor, continue to work with our citizens, and make sure that we can lead through example, and we can lead us out of this, as opposed to being arguing for the next month of who's on top, who's got the right answer, because that's what it's going to look like to me. And so, yeah, we need to change statute, but I think real leadership right now is moving things forward together, and so that the citizens feel safe.
So let's talk about taxes. One of the questions that we've been getting is about the gas tax proposal that your colleague, Representative Noel Campbell, has introduced. The gas tax hasn't been raised for decades. You're at the state revenue is very uncertain at this point. We don't know what fiscal year 2021 will look like, whether you'll have a deficit, how big the deficit is. But there's some thought that maybe if you raise taxes that way, it would help with state revenue for one, and also solve some of the sort of the persistent funding problems we've had with transportation. Do you support this proposal, and will you support it if, and for example, it gets reintroduced next year?
I've got a great admiration for Mr. Campbell. He's trying to do the right thing. He knows we need money for our roads and businesses, and I think that we should have escalated it with inflation. So as the value of the gas has gone up, we should have had just the incremental inflation there. But to raise the tax, no, I won't be supporting that. We need to continue to grow our economy. I think we're looking at different ways, like MAG and PAG has done. Some of the rural counties, when we had our Rural Transportation Caucus, was talking about last summer. They was talking about maybe rural areas being able to keep the 100% of the money if they want to raise taxes in their areas, so those transportation facilities can actually do something better. Because right now, most of our outlying counties are donor counties, so we tax the citizens of Yuma County. They don't get as much as they tax on the road fuel tax. It goes into the Maricopa County. It doesn't come back. So our rural folks aren't really wanting to. They need to figure out how they can come up with something better.
So here's another question. What ideas do you have to support community colleges and universities who may be facing declining enrollment due to as a result of the pandemic, and therefore they're dealing with potentially budget challenges? Do you support, for example, increasing the state-sponsored financial aid to the community colleges and the universities?
I'll have to look at what the details of that are. I know that we've some of the CARES money that the governor's doing. We've got ways for them to be able to apply for and ask for some additional assistance through the different education funding that we have that's come through the federal government. So that's the education stuff is a working process that we're working through. There's a Zoom meeting tomorrow, just kind of talking about these things. So I support the universities. I think they're very important to education and bring our students here, along with the trade schools. And so I'm fully I fully support the education system, but I'm just going to look at those more in detail.
I'm sorry, you mentioned you're going to have a Zoom meeting tomorrow exactly on this subject?
Not on the colleges, but on education.
Yeah. What can you tell us a little bit more about what this Zoom meeting is and with who?
Well, I think it's a private meeting, but it's more to educate the legislators on what we've got going on for the details. And the good thing is I've been involved with, we've had Zoom meetings with our superintendents in LD13, me and my seatmates, Joanne and Senator Kerr. And so we've been in the a lot of Zoom meetings knowing what the details of these are. And so we've been having our assistant, our policy advisor, Kelsey Jantz, has been helping us along with Ms. Udall. So part of this meeting tomorrow is kind of going over the details of where we're at with the governor and where we're moving forward. Just to try to make sure the legislators are up to date with what superintendents are talking about, because not everybody's is as actively involved with their superintendents as some of us. And so, and that way we can all be, that's how you do leadership, is you're starting to work with what the legislators are hearing out in the field with their own districts, whether it's Maricopa County or Pima County or in the rural districts. And so we can have that flow of information so we can give that to the governor's office and work with what is next and what does the Superintendent Hoffman need to know. So that's kind of the focus of the meeting, just keeping us a flow of information so that we can continue to have those dialogues.
There's a proposal to legalize recreational marijuana. I was wondering if you're for it or you're against it. Would you vote? Would you, it's going to be on a ballot. Are you going to vote for it or are you going to vote against it?
No, I'm going to vote against it.
You care to elaborate?
We have enough problems with the the marijuana, the medical marijuana card for different employees that come in and want to abuse that. And so trying to keep them checks and balances on that. I can just see a legalized marijuana system would be hard for employers.
And I think we're pretty much out of time, but I want to give you the opportunity to address the voters in your district. Any words for them?
Well, I just appreciate you watching. I know that during this whole COVID thing, we've all felt like we know our liberties and our freedoms, and that's one of the biggest things with this. We understand that how free America is and how free society and how we need to get back to that. I can't believe the statutes and everything that's going down, getting torn down, and how we're lawlessness on our lawmakers. And I'm here to stand for our district, here to stand for law enforcement, here to stand for America and its freedoms. And with leadership, we'll get through this. Thank you for your support.
Thank you, Representative Dunn. Good luck in your campaign. And I guess I'll see you when I see you.
Bet. Thank you. Thanks for doing this. Appreciate you hosting.
And to our viewers and listeners, we'll be right back. We're going to bring in the next batch of candidates. And so stay tuned. Back to meet the candidates, and we have with us candidates from Legislative District 14. We have Bob Carb and Kim Beach Muschetti. I think I'm going to start by asking Kim to tell us a little bit more about yourself, why you're running.
Okay, thank you, Luigi. Well, let me tell you a little bit about myself. My family settled here in Sierra Vista about 27 years ago when my husband retired from the Army. And Fort Huachuca and Sierra Vista were pretty familiar places for us, and we've been stationed here several times. I actually hail from the state of Iowa, but I ended up here as a result of my Army time as well. We were both in the Army, which following that, we became educators. And I just recently retired from teaching 22 years here in Sierra Vista. So naturally, I'm an ardent supporter of public education, and that I hope if I'm elected, that I can address some of the gross inequities and the lack of funding that's in our state. I'm running also for the same reason as an educator. I have experienced the effects of inadequate funding for public education, and I felt that the incumbents that had no one running against them really had little regard for the national ranking that's held by our state, which is way down there on the bottom with respect to education. So I just felt that I could be a voice for teachers, students, and parents.
Kim, before I get to Bob, what you said you taught, which elementary, high school?
Elementary, 5th and 6th grade for the most part. We have the 6th grades at the elementary, so yes, lots of fun.
Thank you. Bob?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for having us. I appreciate the opportunity. I grew up in Southern California. I worked my way through college and got a bachelor's in political science from UCLA. And for 40 years, I've been a business person. I've owned 3 companies. First, a small manufacturing company. And then I had a software development company with over 50 people and a $2.5 million annual payroll. And in 2005, I retired and came to Cochise County. And with perfect timing, I decided to get my real estate license. When? In 2009, right before the recession. So I got my real estate license in 2009 and then opened up a real estate brokerage in 2011, which I still have. I'm a bit semi-retired. And I decided to run in 2018 for state rep in this district because I thought we needed to have a conversation about what the future of the state was going to look like. And you learn a lot by running and losing, and I'm glad I did it. And so this is the second time. And again, the same issues are in play as far as I'm concerned. You run because you believe that it's important to have a civil and vibrant discourse about the issues, and that's the best way to keep elected officials accountable. So I'm here to answer questions, and I'm delighted to be involved.
In fact, let me ask you one of the questions. What would be your top priority if you get elected? And just tell us real quick what it is.
Okay. Interestingly enough, prior to pandemic, it was underinvestment in infrastructure and public school education. Because of the pandemic, now the top issue is all to do with budget. The budget process, how to allocate scarce resources. We're going to have a lot of hard decisions to make as we figure out what kind of funding we have. And I think it's going to take leadership and some bold new visions. And so I think from the budget is going to come all other issues this time.
Thank you, Bob. And Kim, same question for you, ma'am. What's going to be your priority if you get elected?
Well, like as Bob said, I had one prior to the coronavirus pandemic, and that, of course, was education. I still think education is going to be a top priority, but it's going to be looked at a little bit differently. Rather than focusing, completely on funding, it'll be a focus on how we're getting back into the classroom. I actually, since I retired, did quite a bit of substitute teaching. And so I'm looking at doing that again come August. I've already been asked several times, and I don't know quite sure how that looks to teachers, to the staff, to the public. And so that's probably going to be my focus, is additionally looking at some of the inequities that have been happening that kind of really splashed up into our faces with this coronavirus in particular areas of our state where we went to online learning, but found out that there were lots of students out there that were not able to do that. And so that's definitely going to be a priority as well.
So you mentioned you're going to be you're considering being a substitute teacher.
Yes.
One of the questions that had been repeatedly asked is if you have children, for example, school age children, would you be comfortable sending them back to school? On August 17, which is I think we've delayed the opening of schools to August 17. But at this point, would you be comfortable in sending your children or nephews or nieces or any member of your family,
grandchildren?
Grandchildren. I was trying so hard.
Spring chicken here. That's okay.
I was trying so hard not to say grandchildren.
It's okay. I have to say I'm kind of a fence sitter there. I would really want my grandchildren, my children, to go back to school. I know there are there's a lot of talk about how children do not pass on the virus, et cetera, or they don't get as ill from it, but they still can pass it on to the staff and teachers. So as an educator, I'm very concerned about how the teachers will be treated. How are they going to be protected against such a thing? I also think that children, there are more mental and emotional issues in this whole thing that are not being considered either. Would I send them back? At this point, I think I would, because it it is something that emotionally and psychologically, I think children need. Would it be every day? Perhaps not. Perhaps on a limited schedule, 2 days a week, something like that. Yes.
And Bob, the same question for you, sir. If you got, children, grandkids, I think you didn't know.
I don't. Unfortunately, I do not have children or grandchildren. If I don't have children, I guess I don't have grandchildren. I'm pretty much where Kim is on this issue. Obviously, each school district is going to have to make decisions based on their physical plant, the mix of children. One of my concerns is just simple things like transportation to and from schools. How is that going to be handled? Once you're in the schools, no cafeteria time, no play time. I'm concerned. I do believe that children need to get back in the schoolroom, but I think we need to leave it up to educators and the people at the district level to make the decision with involvement with the parents. I hope we can get kids back into the schools soon. They will fall behind if they can't get in-person learning.
So, one question has to do with your approach to working with the governor. Regardless of whether, let's say, for example, that the Democrats won and the majority in the House or the Senate, or both the House and the Senate, for example, what kind of approach? There are sort of two approaches, right? So one approach, which I think Kathy Hoffman has shown, is to work with the governor kind of behind the scenes and get things done that way. Now, she's asking for money for schools, and the governor has provided like significant amount of his with the CARES Act money for exactly that that request. The other approach is to be more critical of the governor and kind of be more critical with the government. I wonder, which mold you find yourself? Would be more of the Kathy Hoffman approach, or more like the critical approach? Let me start with Bob.
To me, I would love to see bipartisanship here, and let's flip both the House and the Senate as long as we're going to be bipartisan. I believe that the governor is the chief administrative officer of the state, but the Secretary of Education, it's a superintendent of education. It is important that we listen to her as well. I think you work cooperatively, and if it's behind the scenes, that's great. Don't take glory. And that's one of the problems with the legislature. They all want to pass legislation to control local school districts and local governments. No, let's work cooperatively. Stop taking feeling you have to take the ability to take the idea that you solve the problem. So that's why I do believe we should be cooperative.
And Kim, the same question to you, ma'am.
I like the Kathy Hoffman approach. I love the job that she's doing. I think she's doing a fantastic job. I do agree that the governor is the man that's in charge. And when you're in a crisis, I know that there's now some battles going on between the legislature and the governor about who's going to make what decisions. When it comes to talking about our schools, I'm with Bob in that this needs to be a nonpartisan issue or a bipartisan issue. This is education, and this is our future. And I don't think it should involve small petty differences. We need to fund the schools because we're talking about who's going to take care of us when we get older. It's very important. And in addition to funding elementary children and high school children, I think we need to fund and educate adults, because education, in my opinion, it's a deterrent against ignorance. And when we have ignorance, we end up with people battling back and forth based on opinions, and that's never a good thing. So I think this has to be a bipartisan issue. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, so I do want to follow up with you about the idea of adult education.
Yes.
There was a time when we were funding, for example, internship programs.
Yes.
There was a time when, and I'm not sure exactly where this program is at with businesses, for example, and their workforce development and job training and providing businesses like a tax credit for job training. I want to ask you just real quick. Let me start with Bob. What do you make of that, sir?
The business I owned was a machine shop. And at the time, there were no American precision machinists. The Germans would come over because they had been involved in apprenticeship programs from early age. And I strongly believe in that concept. Locally, the Building Contractors Association had a very small pilot internship program for high school students. I strongly believe that we should figure out ways to fund that type of program. Also, in Sierra Vista, they have worked with the auto repair people, particularly the auto dealers in Sierra Vista, to create a program for high school students and students that go to community college. We should absolutely do it.
And Kim, the same question, just real quick, ma'am.
Absolutely, I agree. Technical education, job opportunities out of high school or during high school, directing those students to different avenues rather than just straight to a four-year college. I absolutely agree. Not everyone's meant to have a four-year college. Other people have interest in other areas. I have to look at having spent some time in Europe and especially in Germany and their plan that they use, their path that these kids go down. I totally agree with that. Yes.
And we're pretty much almost out of time. I do want to ask you just a yes and no a question, okay. And I want to just a yes and no answer. There's this idea of defunding the police, and when I say defunding the police, more specifically, completely not providing any budget to the police, pretty much abolishing the police. Do you support it? Yes or no? Let me start with Kim.
Completely defunding them? No, I do not support completely.
What about Bob?
A simple answer, no.
And let me, if you could just say, a few words to the voters in your district. Go ahead, Bob.
I hope you will consider voting for me. The Republicans have controlled the two houses of the state legislature for over 40 years. I think it's time for a change. I believe there's a new Arizona majority coming, and we need better and we deserve better. So think of an alternative.
Kim?
Okay. Well, I would like to say I would like people to maintain distance and wear masks and think of common sense about COVID-19. I'm not saying we hide away, but I'm saying that we have to have a balance. And if we have a balance, then perhaps we can get back to a particular norm. I think we need to listen to the scientists and the doctors about what's going on. I would like to ask for people's vote, and I will be a passionate supporter of education and various other views, which you can see from my Facebook page. And I'm very happy to have been here and been able to voice that. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Bob. I appreciate your patience and your time. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and I'll see you around.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And to our viewers and listeners, we're going to take a very short break. We're going to bring in the next batch of candidates, and so we'll be right back. candidates. My name is Luigi Del Puerto. I'm the associate publisher and editor of the Arizona Capital Times. We do want you to send in your questions. So if you can click the link, which you're going to see in the description of this event, right at the bottom of your screen, the YouTube event description, just click on that one and you should be able to send your questions in that way. We have with us John Fillmore, a former legislator from Legislative District 16. John, why don't we start with you telling us a little bit about why you're running again and how this pandemic might have changed the way you're campaigning.
Well, Mr. Delperto, first of all, I want to say thank you for having me. And the reason I am running again is because we didn't get much accomplished last year at all. And quite a lot that was on my plate. The reason I ran, I was a small businessman out in the East Valley. I've been there about 36 years. And over the years, I've seen a deterioration in the employees coming in that have been working for me that didn't have the wherewithal. Sometimes they couldn't spell words correctly. And I've never hidden the fact that while I only have a high school education, the greatness of our country has enabled us to achieve so much more. And I had a kid that came in, didn't even know who Christopher Columbus was. So I got taking a look at education prior to running, and I saw that, everyone's always saying more money, more money, more money. We have 227 school districts. We got an average school district if we chop the money up and split it, we get about $38 million. We got a school district with 7 students, one with 11 or 17 students. Out of 227 school districts, 106 of them are just 2 schools or less. And if we did some consolidation, left that money in the classroom, gave more money to the teachers and gave it to the kids, we would have been able to do that. I'm very, very frustrated with what's happening. When our school, we're supposed to gauge our schools on the AZ merit scores. And when the AZ merit scores are 54% failing in English and 56% failing in math, that's a statewide average. I mean, I got a high school district down by Yuma that had kids at 92% failing, 87% failing in English and math, yet it had an 86% graduation rate. Now, what's wrong with that picture? And there's a lot of that. And it's not the money for the kids. It's like Mrs. Hoffman's come in and she's doing a good job. I like the young lady, but quite frankly, I was very dismayed last year when she created an assistant superintendent of equity, but we didn't have assistant superintendent of STEM or science, technology, math. It's like everything has gone wrong. It's like we're a train headed down towards a wreck.
John, I think you cut off there right at the end.
I'm sorry. It's like it seems
you were talking about a train wreck.
Yeah, we were having. I mean, education seems to be headed for a train wreck in this state. Everyone keeps screaming, more money, more money, more money. Money's not the issue. We're not teaching kids the basic capabilities of math, English, or history. If they don't have an understanding of the free enterprise system, we are going to go down the road of socialism, and I don't think that's good for America.
So I think I misspoke when I'm just remembering. I think I misspoke when I said former legislator. You're a current legislator from District 13. So I'm sorry about that. Let me ask you some of the questions that we're getting from the audience. A lot of it has to do with how the governor is managing the pandemic. As you know, the governor shut down some businesses, gyms, bars, tubing in the Salt River, for example. If you're a restaurant owner, you can only open up to 50% capacity. If you're going to dine in at a restaurant, you have to wear a mask. How would what are your thoughts on how the governor has managed this pandemic so far, specifically, I guess, when it comes to shutting down, some businesses?
Governor Ducey is a great governor. Governor Ducey is by far one of the best governors we've had in the state of Arizona. But I believe the governor is getting bad information. I believe the governor is being misled by some of those that are around him unintentionally. I believe, when we start talking about closing down the state and things of that nature, nowadays it seems you don't know who to trust. Who can you believe? When I have Dr. Fauci changing and saying mask one week and then 2 weeks later saying, no, you don't need the mask, and then we're back to the mask, things of this nature. It's not as bad, to my understanding, on the younger kids. It affects the old cronies like me and that. And so, there is some concern, but we are killing people by shutting down private businesses. It's causing suicides, I believe. I believe it's causing a lot of home wrecks. It's not good for the kids. Kids got to get back in school. They got to have that social interaction, things of that nature. And I think running afraid of it is not to the benefit of society, the state of Arizona, or our country.
So let me just ask you a quick follow-up question. How would you have handled this pandemic if you're not looking to shut down some businesses? How would you have ensured, for example, that we're not seeing the kind of spike in cases that we have been seeing in the last couple of weeks in Arizona?
Well, how I would have handled it is immaterial, because we can, you can always sit in the armchair, quarterback armchair, the call. Again, from day one, I would have not shut down. I would have said that, hey, we have a very serious new virus. I would ask that the people and Arizona small business people and the entrepreneurs, we're smart, we're not stupid. Yeah, we would have taken a lot of but when all of a sudden, when the governor said, we got to shut down all the non-essential places, like let's say jewelry stores, but Walmart stays open and Walmart's got a jewelry store inside of it, or a sporting goods store. I mean, it was crazy. There was no rhyme or reason to what we were doing, except we were destroying a lot of lives. And the small businessmen are what made America great. We're the backbone of this society, and yet that's what we're under attack.
I wonder if there's some there. I think I know the answer if I ask you this question. The proposal to require that people wear a mask statewide. The question I want to ask you is when you're outside, do you wear a mask?
I occasionally do. A lot of times I don't. If I'm riding down the car, I'm all by myself, I don't. If I'm walking across a parking lot, I got no one within 15 or 20 feet, I don't. It's 108 degrees out there. If I go inside of a store and I see a lot of elderly people, or if I see elderly people around, or people that are my age or older, yeah, I put it on. It hangs from my ear.
I'm sorry. I think I missed the last part.
I'm sorry, sir. Say it again.
I'm sorry. I think I missed the last part of your sentence.
Oh, the last part is I said is that, yeah, I do wear a mask. I don't always have it on, but it's always available. And that's the way we should have handled this from the very beginning. Instead of us demanding you wear a mask or you wear gloves or you do this, or you do that. No, we should have explained to the people logically, we have a new virus. We don't understand it yet. Be prepared and defend yourself.
So let's shift to raising taxes. One of the most repeated questions we've been asked to ask you, or the candidates, has to do with Representative Noel Campbell's gas tax. The idea is that we haven't raised this gas tax for a couple of decades, and so what are your thoughts on that?
Louis, sir, with all due respect, I would be very, very opposed, and I was opposed to Mr. Campbell's gas tax. And I'm quite surprised, really. I mean, I know Democrats like taxes, but the reality of it is picture a mother of two children, a single mom that lives up in Superior and has to drive from Superior down to the Valley for her job that pays $12 to $14 an hour, and what that tax would do to them. People don't understand how these taxes that they're demanding would really impact the lower income people that are out there. And it's the lower income people that I identify with as a working man in this country, understanding how hard it is to make ends meet, and how just having the ability for us to keep what little amount of money we make for ourselves, how important that is.
So
I would oppose that tax.
We're in a situation right now where the state budget is a little bit uncertain. We don't know exactly what kinds of revenue we will get in fiscal year 2021. It seems like in fiscal year 2020, it seems like we're going to be okay. But in fiscal year 2021, we just don't know what this pandemic is going to do to our state revenue. You have a couple options to solve a budget deficit, for example. But if you were to raise a tax, that's the option for you. Which tax would you raise?
I wouldn't raise any taxes. Now, I think that's a false premise and it's a bad argument. I would not raise any taxes. What I would look at is cutting some of the government. The fact of the matter is, like when I was talking about the school districts, I could show that if we did school consolidation, we would save between $300 to $500 million a year. And that money belongs to those teachers and to those classrooms and not to the administrators and the waste that we did with it. I look at right now when I have people calling me up. Just earlier today, a gentleman called me up from my district telling me how he had not gotten his unemployment compensation. And I says, yeah, explain to me why the government didn't really shut down many of its employees and why they didn't take half of the employees out of the Department of Administration or the Department of Transportation and have them go over and work temporarily at Department of Economic Security and give them a hand to help move things together. These are things that a small businessman would have analyzed and just taken care of almost immediately without doing that. So I don't favor raising any taxes, not at all.
Let me ask you about some of the proposals that are going to be on the ballot this November. One of them is legalizing recreational marijuana. I wonder what are you going to support it? Are you yes on this issue?
I'm one of these people, and I jokingly tell people all the time, I've drank more whiskey and smoked marijuana in my life than a lot of people have. The reality of it is, I quit that 40 some odd years ago. Arizona does not need recreational marijuana any way, shape, or form. And quite frankly, I do oppose it. And I know my district does not like it by and large as a whole. My district is a lot more conservative. And I'm here to represent my district. So my feelings are really unimportant on that issue. I will say I do oppose it. I have opposed it and I will oppose it. I am concerned about if that recreational marijuana is on the ballot. The state has very little control over it because once it's passed by the people, it becomes a nightmare to try to control it. And, when we've got marijuana, THC, highly level THC candies out there floating and kids get them, this is a train wreck. It's not looking pretty.
So let me go back to the effects of COVID-19 on our state budget. And one of the things that the K-12 community has been asking, or will potentially will ask if you have a special session, for example, or come back next year in January, is to allow them the flexibility insofar as counting students. Right. So the whole idea is that a lot of their budget really depends on how many kids they can show up physically in school. At school, and now they're asking for certain flexibility in terms of counting kids so that they can get the budget that they're they're seeking to have. Another idea, for example, is that there's some sort of floor, right? They're asking maybe if it's maybe find a way to ensure that the school district's budget don't drop below, say, for example, 2%. I'm kind of almost certain you're going to get that legislation next year. It's going to be before you. I wonder what your thoughts are on that one. Are you going to support that?
I serve on Appropriations Committee. I serve as the Vice Chairman of the Education Committee. I am firmly supportive of our teachers in our public schools. But the reality of it is, I think parents ought to have the right to send their kids to any school that they want to. I believe that some of the virtual schools are really, really excellent. I've seen some of their work and some of how they operate. I'm very appreciative of it. It's going to be a wave of the future. I think the state ought to be looking at going down that road, getting away from the brick and mortar classrooms that we have in our public schools, and going more towards the virtual schools. I am supportive of keeping the kids or the schools. There's some concerns about the initial monies going in there. This is where the governor and I might part paths. I believe the governor has a lot of money that he's gotten from the federal government, and it's being spent wrong. And I think that it should go to the schools where it's necessary to prop them up. But then we also have to remember these teachers have been paid.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but the governor did in fact allocate some part of the CARES Act money for the school.
Operational word, sir, you just said some part of.
Right. I think it's, if I'm not mistaken, it's about $200 million that he has given the schools and said, you can use this money to help you with your budget.
Yeah, and our Arizona school administrators can waste that in about 6 months in a heartbeat.
So, so I guess just to, I think we're almost out of time. What would be your message to your voters?
The message to the voters in my district,
In
that
your
I
district,
have
yep.
been saying to them all the way along, is that when we come out of this, I have faith that we're going to come out of it excellent. I believe that our economy is going to bounce back in a heartbeat. I talked to small businessmen up and down the trail, the Apache Trail out in East Mesa and in Apache Junction, and they say, hey, just get government off my back and let me make a living and let me pay the payroll for my employees. I think that our Arizona's future is bright. I'm very optimistic about it. I'm concerned about our educational process that we've had, and I'm hoping we can do so much better in the future.
Representative Fillmore, thank you again for your time, sir. Appreciate your patience. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and I'll see you around.
Thank you, sir. You take care, Luigi. Bye-bye.
Bye for now. And to our viewers and our listeners, we will bring the next batch of candidates very soon, so stay tuned. We will be right back. Welcome back to Meet the Candidates. My name is Luigi Del Puerto. I'm the associate publisher and editor of the Arizona Capital Times. And with us are candidates from Legislative District 17. We have with us Liz Harris, and I'm going to try and pronounce this name. And AJ, forgive me if I don't get this one right. AJ Cordoglu.
Cordoglu.
Perfect. Awesome. Let me start by asking you both, and I think I'll start with AJ. Why you're running? A little bit about yourself and how this pandemic might have altered the way you're campaigning.
Well, thank you, Luigi, and thank you to Clean Election Commissions and Arizona Capital Times. And my promise will be, as soon as I win this election, I will subscribe to your newspaper.
Oh, no,
That's
no,
the first thing
no, that's not the way it works. You're supposed to subscribe right now.
Actually, yes, let's do that.
Now do that right away.
Okay.
I will make sure that you have your subscription, before tonight ends.
Thank you. My name is Ajlan Kurdolu. You can call me AJ. And with the support of my community, my district, I'll be your next state senator from District 17. A little bit about myself. I was born and raised in Istanbul. After finishing college, I became an engineer. I moved to Arizona. I came here for my graduate studies, to further my studies. I went to Thunderbird, got my MBA. And then I fell in love with the dry heat. They said it's 115, but it's only dry heat. So I decided to stay in Arizona. And that, of course, started a different journey. And it took me 13 years, long, stressful 13 years, but with hard work and determination, I became a US citizen. And that was such a wonderful moment for me, for my family. We were so proud when we were at the Phoenix downtown federal court. And meanwhile, I started a business. I own a couple of retail shops concentrating on interior design, home decor, and furniture. And basically, I built my life here in Arizona, in Chandler. I bought my house. I built my business, but most importantly, I found the love of my life. She's a teacher in West Side, the Cartwright School District. I'm so proud of her, what she does. And right now, I am your candidate. As a first-generation American, I am your candidate to represent my district at the state capitol. And I just want to say, this happens only in this country. I am so proud of it. I'm so proud of for myself, but more importantly, for my district and for my state. This is an amazing country that gives everyone a chance. And this is a country, an experiment. I really believe that gets better and better every day to find that perfect union.
Thank you. I'm sorry. Yeah, I didn't mean to cut you off.
One
Luige.
more sentence.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
everybody asks why you are running. The mission statement of my candidacy is that I'm running to help every Arizonan, all the Arizonans, to have a chance to fulfill their own American dream.
Thank you. And let's go to Liz. Liz, tell us a little bit about yourself, why you're running, and of course, if you've changed the way you've campaigned as a result of this pandemic.
Thanks. Thank you very much for having me. My name is Liz Harris, and I'm running for Legislative District House of Representatives. Like AJ, I truly do agree in the American dream. I am running, however, as a conservative Republican, and part of that American dream to me is keeping the country the way the founding fathers intended. Now, that's a really harsh thing to say now with all the statues coming down, but just items like keeping taxes low, limiting burdensome regulation, making sure jobs come to Arizona, protecting our Second Amendment rights, supporting law enforcement, making sure the citizens and residents of Arizona are safe and secure. Those are the reasons I'm running. I'd like to make sure our policy stays like that. And then how my quick background, I've had many small businesses, so I'm an entrepreneur at heart. And right now I'm a very successful real estate broker, and I'm highly involved in the association, the Realtor Association, and our multiple listing services. I serve on a lot of boards and a lot of committees. How COVID has affected my campaigning? Well, I still am going door to door with a mask. Less people are opening. I do keep my distance. But I just feel that the face-to-face communication, it's unfortunately, that's part of the fabric of our society, the relationships we build. And right now, COVID is to some degree destroying that. So I'm still getting out there, going door to door. If people don't want to answer, I completely respect that. And I just hope to earn your vote for Legislative District 17. Vote Liz Harris.
And Liz, when you're going out door to door, and when people open their doors, you did say you're wearing a mask and you're practicing social distancing.
Absolutely.
And what about AJ? In your case, sir, are you going out door to door? Are you? And when you do, I'm assuming you're wearing a mask.
Well, in my daily life, yes, I do. When I step outside, I wear my mask. But going door to door, no, I don't think. It's too early, I would say. I would love to go door to door to canvassing, but not right now.
So one of the most repeated questions we have been asked to ask you is how the governor has handled this pandemic so far. As you know, he has ceased the operation or shut down some businesses like gyms, bars. What do you call this one? Tubing in the Salt River. Of course, you can't do that anymore. If you go into a restaurant, you have to wear a mask, and if you're a restaurant owner, you can only open up to 50% of your capacity. So I guess let me start with AJ. What do you think of the governor's action so far?
You know where we are. So governor's actions, he first closed the state too late. And he opened the state too early, in my opinion. And trust me, I want no more than anyone else to open our businesses and go back to our daily lives. But his decision, in my opinion, was not based on science and data and the fact. We're supposed to get 14 days of declining numbers. We didn't have that. He opened up. I understand that part. But at least he should have given everybody clear direction. Because I opened my shop and I seen customers wearing masks, not wearing masks. I seen my neighbors in businesses trying to find a way to keep themselves, their employees, and their clients, customers healthy. And there was no unified response to that. And we sacrificed so much, 2 months, stayed indoors, we lost businesses, we lost jobs, and look where we are right now. All that sacrifice went for nothing. We are even worse shape than we started. So governor should have taken straight, decisive action. And I hope he can do it after this point.
Thanks, EJ. And Liz, same question for you, ma'am. But by the way, you said you're in the real estate business, right? How's your business doing at this point?
Real estate's never been better. I'll just mention this. I was actually having difficulty getting buyers under contract because every house had anywhere from, without exaggeration, 5 to 30 offers. Before the complete shutdown of of Arizona, I was actually in Washington, D.C., and it was like a light switch went off and everything shut down in Washington, D.C. I got on a plane and I got home just a few days before Arizona was shut down. But the important thing is I said to my buyers, now is the time to get under contract. And I was able to get 4 buyers under contract because I foresaw the shutdown coming. So with regard to Governor Ducey, I do disagree highly with the businesses that were shut down. If we look at the gym, so I am a believer in herd immunity. I am a believer, but more important than that, we are responsible for ourselves. And developing a strong immune system is something that each and every one of us can do. A lot of MD physicians are on board with testing our vitamin D levels, just making sure we're as healthy as we can be, because the disease affects, we know, the morbidly obese, those with underlying conditions, the elderly. Our death rate compared to other states is relatively low. I just looked at some numbers a few hours ago. But when Governor Ducey decided we can't go work out, I have news for you. The people that typically show up the gym with me at 4 a.m., they're the ones really taking care of themselves. And I've posted, I was mortified that my gym got shut down not once, not twice, but now 3 times. So I disagree with the businesses that were shut down. Meanwhile, casinos are still open. You know, there are plenty of high or dense places that remained open. And then if we look at restaurants, they're so different. Some restaurants are tiny and intimate. Maybe those needed to have the 50% rule, but other restaurants, you know, they're wide open. So do they really need the 50% capacity rule? That pretty much summarizes it. I really wish more people, more physicians, more naturopaths came out and talked about how they're treating this, and they're having phenomenal results.
So let me shift to another subject, which is, as you know, we've had Black Lives Matter protests a couple weeks ago. Some of the protesters believe that we should defund the police. And by the way, when I say defund police, there are really two ideas, right? One is when they say defund the police, they mean reallocate some of the budget for the police and put them to social services, for example. The other idea is, I think, more strident, which is when they say defund the police, abolish the police. They completely not provide any budget, which would mean really shutting down the police. Let me ask AJ, what do you make of, let me just ask you about that idea of shutting down the police, abolishing the police, defunding the police?
That's a very important question. Thank you for that, Luigi. I do believe our system, our police force needs reforms. And there are a lot of ideas out there, with bipartisan supports, even at the last session, like such as body cameras on law enforcement, investigations on deadly force users, and better training for our officers, especially on the de-escalation technique. But another important point that I believe, we put a lot to our police officers, and we expect a lot from them, responsibilities that they are not trained for, and frankly, they shouldn't be dealing with. We should increase the funding for our social services, like mental health issues, the addictions, the domestic abuse, and these issues can be handled by special service counselors other than our police officers. And I believe this will solve a lot of problems.
But you don't agree, you will not go so far as to completely abolish the police or completely defund them. You do not support that idea. Okay. All right, let me go to Liz.
Thank you.
Same question, ma'am.
I do not support defunding the police or abolishing the police. Apparently, all lives matters triggers people. So now I'm saying Roy G. Biv, lives matter, which Roy G. Biv, if you remember, that's the spectrum of the rainbow. Every life matters, including blue lives matter. The police, the thing is, the police, when they're called on a domestic disturbance call, they don't know they can't bring a social word. You can't talk the people down very often. I think the police do the absolute best job they can. Like every industry, there is a bad apple. We need to call those people out sooner rather than later. But when I am in an emergency situation, which I think we're all going to have at least once in our life, I want to be able to dial 911 and have that 4-minute response time that Chandler offers. So I support law enforcement. I support all first responders. And unfortunately, I think the death of George Floyd, I think it's very sad, but I just think it went in the wrong direction. And I think it led to the riots, and I don't know, it's a very sad state for this country, in my opinion.
Let me ask you about school choice, and just real quick, we're almost out of time. Some within, there's some sectors of the K-12 community, for example, don't really like empowerment scholarship accounts. These are scholarships that these are really state money that are given to the students to then use for alternative educations, for example. Some of them would like to limit or at the very least maintain the program rather than expand it. Let me ask you about expanding, empowerment scholarship accounts. AJ, do you support it?
No.
Okay.
I think we should keep it the way it is. Shouldn't take funds away from our public schools.
And just to be clear, when you say you would like to keep it the way it is, do you support actually narrowing it, shrinking it, or even abolishing it?
At this moment, I will keep it the way it is.
And what about Liz?
I support school choice, and I would actually either keep it the way it is or expand on it, depending on the circumstances.
And I guess with that, we are out of time. Liz and AJ, thank you again for your time. I really appreciate your being so patient. Please enjoy the rest of your evening, and I guess I'll see you around.
Thank you.
Thank you, Luigi.
Thank you, Luigi.
To our viewers and to our listeners, we're going to take a really short break. We're going to bring in the next batch of candidates, and we will be right back. Welcome back to the Arizona Capital Times Meet the Candidates. My name is Luigi Del Puerto. I'm the associate publisher and editor of the Arizona Capital Times. We do want your questions if you're listening in or if you're viewing Meet the Candidates tonight. In the YouTube description, if you click on that one, there should be a link, and that's how you're able to send in your questions. And we'll try to get to as many of them as we can. Our last batch of candidates are candidates from Legislative District 18. So let's begin. Let me ask all of you, in the case of incumbent legislators, why you're running or seeking re-election, and in the case of Bob Robson, why you're running again. You're a former legislator. In fact, let me begin with Mr. Robson, sir.
Well, thanks for asking me. And plus, this feels like I've been suspended animation since 6 o'clock, so it's kind of fun. Basically, you said to make it brief earlier, the reason I'm running is really to be part of the solutions, as I've always put it, to the complex problems that face the state. And believe it or not, since we started this campaign process, there's a lot of complex problems that now face the state. So I'm coming. Wanted to come back.
Cool. Thank you. Short and sweet. I like that. Representative Germain, go ahead, ma'am.
Good evening, everybody. I'm State Representative Jennifer Germain, running for re-election. I currently sit on the Government Committee, the Elections Committee, Military and Veterans Affairs Committee, and I chair the Study Committee on Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls. I'm running for re-election because my work at the state legislature is not done yet. We've moved the needle on a lot of very important topics, and we've gotten law enforcement agencies to work across jurisdictions to find people quickly, and especially find children quickly when they go missing. And we're still pushing and moving forward and getting work done. So I'm running for re-election because I'm not done yet.
Thank you, Representative Germain. Representative Epstein, ma'am, go ahead.
Thanks. I'm glad everybody's here tonight. I wish I could actually see you, but hello. I am running because I am dedicated to helping people. I began by wanting very much to help our school children, and that has grown over time. And right now we have some very serious problems facing our state, and I am sort of a professional problem solver. I'm a computer and business systems analyst, which means I find ways to cut costs and make processes work better. And Arizona has quite a few processes that could work better. So we need leadership at the Capitol that can build trust and confidence. And we do that by having leaders who reach out and listen to others and give respect for the fact that any legislator's opinion, that person is representing 200,000 others, and therefore it has value. And we want to bring everybody into the tent and not push others out into small other tents. So I'm running because I really believe in teamwork. In fact, I'm leading on the teamwork and technology in our caucus, in the Democratic caucus in the House, by helping us to form work groups to work specifically on COVID relief was one of our first projects we started on. So, you know, good jobs and good health go together. And the way that we're going to improve our recovery, our economic recovery and our health recovery, is to work on our projects together and solve problems together.
Thank you, all of you. Let's start with the audience, the viewers' questions. As you know, the governor has shut down some businesses. If you're going to go into a restaurant, you're required to wear a mask. If you're a restaurant owner, you can only open up to 50% capacity. Let me start with Representative Epstein. If you were the governor, would you shut down the restaurants completely at this point, so 100%, and not just perhaps the restaurants, but other businesses that you may deem non-essential?
First of all, I have to say that I'm kind of glad I'm not the governor, because these are very difficult questions to answer. And I think that he actually started out doing an okay job. He was focused on the science and Arizona data, and that was the right way to move forward. But then things changed and businesses were opened up even before we had a trend in the right direction on our hospitalizations and cases. And specifically to your question, guidance was not given to businesses. So many businesses were just choosing, I don't know what to do because I don't know how to make my business safe. So we need that much stronger guidance. We need the enforcement. And I think the piece that has been missing in all of this is the long-term plan for a pandemic. So it's not a big surprise to epidemiologists that we're having a pandemic. They saw it coming. So we should have been planning for making an economic plan that would have said, this is specifically how we're going to go in with a laser targeted plan of what businesses can be open and how they can be open.
Let me just, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but let me just bring you back to the question. If you were in charge of the state, would you shut down, let's say, for example, restaurants at this point?
At this point, we need the contact tracing so we don't have to shut businesses down. If we were doing contact tracing, then we could know where is there an outbreak, where are there employees who are infecting each other, and where are they not? So for instance, if there's an outbreak in a meat processing factory, then you have to find out where did that strain actually come from. And through serious forensic epidemiology, they can figure out, did the people in that meat packing plant catch it from each other, or did they catch it from an outside source? If we were to do the appropriate testing, we wouldn't have to shut down.
The same question for Mr. Robson, sir. If you were, well, I guess the overarching question, right, is how, what do you think of the governor's handling of this pandemic so far? And if you were in charge, would you in fact shut down the businesses at this point?
Should I give the same answer as Mitzi just gave and not answer the question, or
you got your answer, sir. Any way the way you want it. I will ask you again if you.
We go in circles. I understand that, or put a committee together, or put out a press release, right, so to speak. But that's one of the toughest questions to answer. But now that we know the seriousness of what we're faced with, obviously we have to try to mitigate the risks. I mean, I'm really amazed that we're currently dealing with an issue. People realize if a mask is gonna diminish some of this, then we should be wearing masks. I mean, I wear one. It's not a problem. I mean, wearing glasses. I never knew, because I do cheaters. I don't wear them all the time, but the fog coming up from breathing is kind of interesting, when you're moving pretty quickly. But yeah, it's 6 to 1, a half a dozen another. We tried it. We shut them down. I think the governor's taking a reasonable approach. I think businesses are recognizing the liabilities of not behaving properly, and they're doing what they need to do to mitigate the exposure. But if somebody says to me, "Stay at home, only do what you need to be doing," that's what I'm going to be doing. It's a real way. It's a real approach. The government doesn't have to tell you to do everything constantly, but they have to give you some general guidance. And I think we have enough general guidance out there that says, hey, it's increasing. It's a problem. Wear a mask. Only do the things you need to be doing. Get back. Stay within your cohort, so to speak, at home. And let's see if we can all get this thing to diminish greatly, so we get kids back into the classroom, we get people back into restaurants, we get people back to work.
So let me just go back to the question real quick. If you were in charge, would you shut down the restaurants at this point?
At this time?
Yep.
No. I think we know what it's all about.
Right. Representative Germain, the same question, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Luigi. To kind of echo what both of my co-candidates have said, I do think that we came out of the first shutdown without the proper enforcement at the local level to allow local authorities to go after those people who were breaking the rules and being dangerous with the way they were operating their businesses during a global pandemic. I don't think that we need to re-shut down everything. I know that my family is personally doing a lot of takeout, and we come home and we eat at home. But with proper distancing, there should be abilities to keep businesses operating. But we are asking everybody to do their part and to please follow the guidelines because COVID-19 is very, very serious and it is deadly. And we've already lost more than 2,000 Arizonans. And we've got children with multi-symptom organ failure. So it is very serious.
Another question has to deal with whether you would have preferred that the legislature is in session, at this point to act as a kind of a check on the governor. We've seen, several legislators, for example, recently wanting to do a special session. But the overarching theme, right, is that if you're in session, then maybe you can support or counteract the governor's action. So let me ask Mr. Robson, sir, would you have preferred that the legislature is in session right now?
Say what was it with the legislature's in session right now?
So there's this, as you know, some believe that the legislature should be in session to act as a counterpoint to the governor's executive order. So the idea is that if the legislature is in session, you can check the governor's actions. You can pass legislation. You can kind of force him to, sign or veto a bill.
You can do all of that stuff if you have 40 and 20. So it takes a majority of a majority, so to speak, to get a lot of that done. So if people want to go back and they think it's serious enough to go back, then they should get 40 members of the House and 20 members of the Senate, and they can reconvene. Otherwise, it's just empty. It's a bunch of empty words, quite candidly. And when the legislature's in session, it should be checks. It should be a check and a balance, obviously, on the executive branch, and the executive branch is a check and balance on the legislative branch. But it's a matter of when the people get together down there at some point and put things and get their heads together, as opposed to getting up and making a whole mess of speeches about nothing on either side of the equation. It gets to be a little bit cloudy, and the public suffers because of it. The legislature shut down with a whole mess of things that could have potentially been beneficial relative to the COVID issue for businesses. And the liability that's hanging out there for business owners and the penalty could be quite severe. And I never imagined in my lifetime that I'd be potentially could be a person that could sue somebody who sneezed in a restaurant, right? And they delivered COVID, and the restaurant owner could be sued for it potentially. So there's a lot of things that are hanging out there, but the legislature got up and left. My question is, are people out there who got up and left out there campaigning on the streets? Are they knocking on doors? And if they are, then it was a very hollow situation to evacuate the Capitol just so they could run down the street and knock on doors.
Representative Epstein, ma'am, the same question.
Thanks, Luigi. I think that Mr. Robson may have touched on something that matters there when he talked about 40-60 or a majority of the majority. See, a majority of the majority has been one of our big problems in the legislature recently, whereby the majority party, the Republican Party, will not bring any legislation forward unless it can pass with a majority of their members supporting it. Well, I believe in a big tent Arizona, where we could have some bills that get passed because some Democrats and some Republicans are willing to work together in the middle. And that hasn't been what's been going on downtown. And therefore, if we had had a special session, if it were the same as it has been the last 2 years, or we've had this great failure of leadership, whereby there was not any indication that they really wanted to work in a bipartisan way on developing problems together. So I would love to be back at the legislature and working on these problems. We have so much going on. At the end of July, we have a cliff for our unemployment insurance. The federal benefits are going to end, and people are going to lose, say that we're getting $600 a week, are going to lose that. And we also have an eviction crisis coming up at the end of the month when the eviction moratorium ends. And the governor has not shown any indication of what he's going to do about those problems. So it would have been nice if we had the legislature in session so we could get to work and work that out in a collaborative way to find some solutions. But we need to do it differently.
Let me ask you just a really quick follow-up question. You mentioned the majority of the majority, right? The idea is that if the Republican caucus, if they can get, a majority of the members to support maybe a controversial bill, they're not gonna, move that proposal forward. Are you suggesting that, for example, if the Democrats were in charge or become in charge of the House, let's say next year, let me ask you like sort of a hypothetical situation. It's a hypothetical situation, but you know what I mean. Let's say, for example, there's a controversial proposal. There's a good number of Republicans who support it, fewer numbers of Democrats who support it, but there's enough, there's 31 votes. Would you, in fact, if you're a leader, for example, would you allow that proposal to move forward? Just really quickly.
Right. So I will definitely be putting forward processes that will allow for more inclusion of more people. The problem right now is that our bills are written in a way that a legislator writes them in a silo. And we need to have seriously bigger stakeholder meetings with more people before it gets to committee.
Let me just refine the questions. I do want like a clear answer from you on this one. Let's say there are 11 Democrats in support and the 20 Republicans in support, but you're in charge because you have the majority. Would you push the proposal forward?
When I'm in charge, Luigi, we will have, by the time it gets to the committee, it had better have the support that it needs from all sides because it needs a better stakeholder process before it gets to committee. Once it gets into committee, there really isn't very much time to really appropriately develop the solution. So we need much better stakeholder work before it gets to committee. And that's how we get people to the table.
So in answer to the question,
we've had too many years of Democrats that don't even get to come to the table ever on a bill. And I will bring Republicans to the table on developing the bills.
Thank you, Representative
Stein.
Stein.
In answer to the question, Luigi, answer the question.
No, I get it.
I brought it up.
Yeah, we're trying very hard. Mr. Robson, we're trying very hard so that it's not technically a debate.
But I think I worked in a legislature where 31 votes were 31 votes, and it didn't matter where it really came from as long as you had 31 votes. So I understand that process very well when Republicans and Democrats get together across the aisle and it's 31 votes. And if you have 31 votes, you can get something to happen.
No, I get your point. Let me ask Representative Germain. Ma'am, the same set of questions, right? There are multiple sort of follow-up questions to that one, but your thoughts, ma'am.
Luigi, I've got a history of working with both sides of the aisle. I've co-sponsored and co-written bills with Republicans. I've had multiple numbers of my bills heard, and I really do think it boils down to being able to work together. And being able to judge bills on their merits. And some committee chairs have done that beautifully and some committee chairs don't. I personally would judge bills on their merit and build relationships on both sides of the aisle. as I have done the last 2 years.
And so just to ask, pose the same question to you, if Democrats are in charge of let's say the House, and you have 20 Republicans let's say 25 Republicans in support, and then let's say 6 Democrats in support, it's still a majority, right? And you still get like 31 votes. If you're in leadership, would you allow that proposal, whatever it is, to move forward?
Luigi, I don't plan to run for a leadership position because I'm very happy with working on my projects and hopefully being a committee chair. But I would hear bills from all sides of the aisle.
No, I understand what you're saying. Let me, I think Representative Germain is trying to talk to somebody, a member of the family, perhaps. Let's give her the opportunity to actually respond.
I'm sorry, my child just ran into the room.
No worries. If you have my kid waltzing in the background, I apologize in advance. But let's say, for example, you're not in leadership, but would you support, such a configuration of a majority in that way?
It would honestly depend on the bill and depend on the merits of what they're trying to pass. We've seen some things that have gotten broad support on the Republican side and moderate support on the Democratic side, and I can point to some of Dr. Shaw's bills that I helped work with him on that benefit the healthcare industry. So it would really depend upon the merits of the bill.
Thank you. Mr. Robson, I do want to ask you the same question, sir. You go back to the legislature. Let's say you go back to the legislature. It's still a Republican-controlled, legislature, and you have, let's say, 6 Republicans and 25 Democrats in support of a proposal. Would you move that proposal forward?
I think if you have 31 votes, you should be able to get a bill moved forward.
It doesn't matter what the composition is of the vote.
You always have the Senate. You always have the executive branch. I mean, that's what it's all about. But if you've got enough of them, but I mean, you have to have. I used to always say to members, go out and get a list. Tell me where your votes are. I mean, I've been in leadership for, as you well know, for 10 or 12 of my 14 years that I was down there. And when I started out, it was different. It used to be just get 31 votes, and obviously, as they're talking now, things changed. And I think we have to get past some of this stuff and look at what's good for the state of Arizona. And obviously there are bills that are dynamite on both sides. And that's where leadership has to manage those issues.
And yeah, thank you for that, Mr. Robson. I can assure you one thing: whatever dynamite proposal you have, we will write about it in the Arizona Capital Times. And I think with that, we're pretty much out of time. If you can just leave like one word or a few words to the voters in your district, please go ahead. Let's start with Representative Epstein. Ma'am, go ahead.
Inclusion. We want to hear your voice and include it in everything we do.
Representative Germain.
I pledge to continue meeting with everybody, working with everybody. Everybody's voice matters. Dissent matters. So we need to make sure that everybody has a seat at the table.
And Mr. Robson?
I think if we're talking about the ability to get along, that should definitely happen. And I'd obviously request their vote when they go to the polls and elect me back to the House.
And with that, I want to thank you again for being so patient and for staying patiently in I suppose you can call it the green room, and spending your evening with us. I hope to see you at some point in the future. In the meantime, be safe and try to enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you for the opportunity. It's been fun.
Thank you. Good night.
And to our viewers and our listeners, thank you again for joining us this evening. We are going to do this again tomorrow at 6 p.m. And I want to thank the Citizens Clean Elections Commission for sponsoring this series of Morning Scoops. And with that, I'm going to say goodbye, adieu, au revoir. Sorry, goodbye, au revoir, and I'll see you around.